Okay, we'll do.
1490, the history of America. Columbus comes to the Queen, says, I have a plan. I'm going to find the new trade route. I'm going to find the new land. I'm going to find something that will totally change everything. And Spain will be the center of commerce. I will bring this to you. Well, she didn't like him. He was arrogant. She said, off with you. He left. He was so crushed because he really believed he had found the new world. He could find it. He could change the world. It destroyed him. And so he went back and he went to a monastery and he lived with monks. Monks told him, hey, Columbus, shut the pie hole for a little while, eh? Why don't you get down on your knees and say some prayers? Within a year, he was humbled. He was humble enough to where he understood that God would lead him. Well, one of these monks happened to have an in with the court. Said, I think you need to listen to this guy again. He's changed. He's a humble man. He's listening to God. It's not about his ego or his power. It's about service. And so he went in front of the Queen again. And this time he asked humbly. He said, I want to serve. She gave him the ships. But everybody was afraid on the ships that, they were going to fall off the edge of the earth. They were going to be eaten by a giant sea dragon. They were afraid. Well, they went and they were on the ships. And every day Columbus prayed. I've read his diaries. It's amazing. A humble man serving God on the way there. Well, there's going to be a mutiny. Because the ship, the crew, they all want to go back. They say, this is craziness. This is madness. We're never going to find it. We're all going to die out here. He says, give me 3 days. So they do. They make a pact that on the morning of the third day, if they haven't found land, they'll turn around. Columbus gets down on his knees, and he is on the ship, and he is praying hard, Lord, please, 3 days. He writes in his diaries that the winds pick up, and the ships, the sails billow like never before. And the speed of the ship, he could feel God. He writes in his diaries, he knew God was on their side. The morning of the third day, sun comes up, and there is land. He sees it. But as you read Columbus from here on out, he again becomes arrogant. The minute he plants his flag on that soil, he becomes arrogant again. And once again in his diaries, I am going to be the most famous man in the world. They're going to make me governor of this land. They leave to go back. His diaries again, this time arrogant. And as they're sailing back, the winds pick up and they're pushing him back. The seas are tossing and turning the ships. They're afraid now they're all going to die. God is angry at them for some reason. Columbus can't figure it out. He decides that they need to take a pilgrimage to the Holy Land to give thanks. So they cut straws and everybody on board pulls a straw. The one who has the short straw has to go make the pilgrimage to the Holy Land. Guess who picks it? Columbus. Instead of being humbled, Columbus holds the straw up and says, God has selected me again. The winds pick up. The storms get worse. They draw straws again. Columbus selects the short straw. God has selected me a second time. I truly am picked by his hand. The winds get stronger. 3 times Columbus on the way home picks the short straw. 3 times he uses it instead of to be humbled. He uses it to build himself up. They barely make it home. Columbus dies broke, never to return to America again. God's finger pushed a humble man here and then kept him away from this land. There was something special about this land. Jamestown. They come to Jamestown. The English, they're looking for gold. The Indians actually fenced these people in. They thought they were mad. They thought they were insane. They thought they were dangerous. They fenced them in. Most people don't know Jamestown ended in cannibalism because they had no food. They couldn't grow anything. They couldn't make any friends. They couldn't go anywhere. When the English ships finally came back, the people there were mad. One guy was eating a family member who had died. Again, the land had been protected from those who had come just for greed. The Pilgrims. Now we're up to 1600s. The Pilgrims. The Pilgrims decide they want to come. But they don't want to come here. They're actually going to New Guinea. The Speedwell goes out in front of the Mayflower, and they're on their way to New Guinea. But the ship has leaks. Things are wrong with it. Now, they don't want to come here because they know how it ends every time. It ends with being eaten. It ends with being killed by Native Americans. It ends badly every time man comes to this continent. But the Speedwell goes out. The Pilgrims get down on their knees to thank God. They get down on their knees with the Speedwell already out. The Mayflower Pilgrims get on their knees and they're praying. And they feel, if you read their diaries, they feel that something's happening. They're not supposed to go to New Guinea. They're supposed to come to North America. None of them want to go. Bradford says, but it's the Lord's will. None of them want to go. Some of the Pilgrims actually leave the group and say, if you're going to go there, you're insane. I can't do it. Remember, Puritans. Puritans, that wasn't a happy thing. That was something that people called, it's like, look at those tea partiers. It wasn't a term of endearment. It was a slam on them. Oh, look at the Puritans. They were pure of heart. They prayed and prayed. And if you read their diaries, what they said was that God had promised them that if they would go to the New World, if they would come to North America, He would protect them. As long as they remained pure, as long as they remained in service of Him, He would be a protector of them, and they would prosper, for He had great work in this land. He promised them that they would be a part of something great and glorious. He promised them that He would build His temples of old here. They interpreted that as building the temple of God inside of themselves. They believed that they had to be a temple for the Lord. The Speedwell, unbeknownst to them, turned around and had to come back. Now they were joined. And they made their way to the New World, where they did stay true to the Lord. And they did prosper. Now we're up to 1740. If you look at the pattern, you see that the Lord was protecting this land. You see that the Lord was saving it for something special. You see that the Lord was saying, you've got to be a good, decent people. Well, now we're at 1730. And George Whitefield comes. Now, George Whitefield, most people don't even know George Whitefield. I didn't know him until about 4 months ago. Because I was wondering, how did these guys happen? I mean, the collection of our founders is unbelievable. How did these guys get here? George Whitefield played a huge role. George Whitefield was a guy, he was a preacher. He was our first evangelical preacher. He was what's called an open-air preacher. Believe it or not, there's about 6,600 people here tonight. George Whitefield could preach in the open air without any kind of microphone. And Ben Franklin testified he walked it out. He walked the crowds out. He testified that George Whitefield could be heard and spoke in crowds of 20,000 without a microphone. He was an incredible preacher. He was over in England, and he actually thought that